better ways to kind of figure your career out or figure out what are paths, right? In those days, so I graduated from college in 1998 with just a BCom. The only way that a company could actually grow and be what they wanted to be was if they had customer loyalty and if they knew how to build experiences with customers.
The next speaker that I have with me today, she has a lot of experience with clothing and she's revolutionizing clothing for you. How? By putting tech in clothing. And how is that happening? For that, you have to listen to us. I would like to welcome Kuntal Malia on the stage. Give her a big round of applause, please, guys. Guys, Kuntal here has a lot of experience with, designing amazing clothes and making sure that, the clothing that you need, the clothing that you want in your life, that reaches you at your doorsteps. So Kuntal, let's start with understanding who you are as a person, right?
So I grew up in Kenya, Tanzania, Somalia for about 10 years. Sometimes even I forget where all I've been, right? It's a little complicated. And then I was in boarding school for 2 years, very carried away by Enid Blyton. And if any of you have ever read those books, and so wanted to go to boarding school. Did 2 years of schooling in Bombay and then did my last 2 years of schooling in Dubai.
Wow. And when did Bombay happen to you then?
So Bombay, I did my 7th and 8th. And then I went to Dubai, came back here for college. And then I was here for a couple of years. But I do count myself as a Mumbaiker because this is where my parents are from. My entire extended family is from here, and this in that sense constitutes home in all of the moving around.
Right. Kuntal, what kind of a student were you? You said that you did your college from here. Were you a shy or an introvert kind of a person, or you were like gung-ho about things that you were doing and wanted to explore the world?
Year after year, and my dad also got really tired of seeing it, right? Where it was just like, she's really smart, she's really brilliant, she just doesn't apply herself. I would always kind of go ahead and, just do something at the last minute. I took a lot of pride in the fact that, oh my God, look how well I'm doing when I don't put in any effort. I'm so cool, right? So there was some sort of a very twisted psychology on that whole front happening. And then I think somewhere in college, of all the places, and I don't even think it was an important year, but I was like, what big thing am I waiting for to prove myself? And why am I like not putting in the effort and I'm just kind of skating on? Right. I am going to put in the effort, because if I'm doing this, I'm going to do it really well, or I'm not going to do it at all, and that just became a complete switch. So I can't remember whether I was quiet or out there. I think I was probably in between, but I remember this being a consistent feature of my school life for a very long time, including 10th as well.
Right. And what was the idea back then? What did Kuntal want to become? Right. We always have these big ideas and dreams in our life that we want to specifically do this thing in life. And do you think you followed that path?
No. I don't even think I actually had a very strong dream in that sense of what I wanted to do. I knew I had like various things that got inspired from different angles, right? So my dad, for example, worked at the World Bank, which is why the countries in East Africa happened.
Right.
So I was very inspired about the idea of being an economist. And I was like, this is so cool, this is so great. I get to kind of, talk about different things. And there were multiple different angles that I kind of always explored. I think what became a little easy for me, even while I was going through school and even through college, is that you may not always know what you want to do,
right,
but at least figure out what you don't want to do.
Right.
Figure out those options and discard them. Right, so you understand that what all is around me, and I go ahead and explore. I actually am pretty good in economics. I've done stats classes, etc., all of that stuff. But further down the line, it just wasn't something that I wanted to do.
Did that interest you, or did that?
I did. I liked it. I liked it actually a lot. So there's a difference, I think, in terms of what you find interesting, what you're good at, and then what you decide to dedicate 24/7 of your hours at, right? I may be interested in playing the piano. I may be good at it as well, which I was actually. But that doesn't mean I want to dedicate my entire life to it.
So it's very important, I think, the point that you just mentioned, that
Yeah.
we might just like a lot of things in our life, but
Yeah.
that does not mean everything that we like, we take it up, right?
You don't have to. I mean,
and how do you make that choice? How do you make that distinction that this is something that I like, that I'm going to devote more time in?
I think just by, in some ways, doing it, right? Sometimes when you're in the heart of it and you're kind of, like let's say I give the example of piano. If you want to be a fantastic pianist, you have to practice. And you have to practice a lot. And you have to ask yourself, is this something that, I'm willing to do? I think for me, one of those decisions happened even in consulting. So I was a consultant for the first few years of my life, and I know I might be jumping a little ahead.
Yeah.
But I remember my decision to leave consulting came out of a moment like that, because I'd always known I wasn't going to be a career consultant.
Right.
It's too much of a tough scenario on your personal life, right? And then I think there was one night where I was working till 12 a.m. There were emails and all coming throughout the night, and I had already at that point decided I will quit once I come to this level. Seeing all those emails, seeing the amount of work that I was kind of doing, I was like, I'm doing this much work to be where I am. If I want to get to the next level, I'm going to have to do this much work plus X. So, and at the end of the day, if this is not my final goal, why am I doing this?
Right.
So that led to the decision to move out of consulting forever.
Right. I think a lot of us, who work day in and day out, there comes a stage where, you think and you question yourself that
Yeah.
why am I doing this?
You
And
need to. I think it's very critical to kind of ask yourself, what am I getting out of this? Why am I doing this? What am I learning? How am I growing? The benchmarks of salary, and frankly speaking, I see also people getting very caught up with how many people do I manage and all. That's really not important. It's just that what is happening to your growth, right? What is happening to you as an individual? When you look back, are you going to be happy about what you've done? I think that becomes really important to keep on having conversations with yourself.
Superb. So let's come to your B school journey now.
Yeah.
In Bombay, that was?
That was at NMIMS.
Right. So how did NMIMS happen to you? Did you gun for an NMIMS, or it was the option that was left for you that you chose?
I had applied for a few schools, including the IIMs and NMIMS. I didn't get into the IIMs. I got into NMIMS. And then again, since I hadn't really thought through whether MBA was the thing that I wanted to do. And I think, these days there are definitely better ways to kind of figure your career out or figure out what are paths, right? In those days, so I graduated from college in 1998. With just a BCom, it would be very difficult for you to find a good opportunity,
Right.
and to kind of get something that allows you to figure out what you want to do. You had to get a master's. You had to kind of get something that gave you some credibility. And so that's where I went with the NMIMS degree as well. And it actually turned out to be really good, because I think I found something that, I could relate to and something that I could kind of understand.
When you went in there, when you actually, went into a B school,
Yeah.
right, in Bombay, in NMIMS, the kind of place that it was, the kind of life that you saw there, was it something that you could relate to? Did you think that this is exactly what I wanted?
B schools or any kind of places that you're at, right, finally comprise of the people that you're with. So, and especially also coming out of it, the networks that you form. So, I think the kind of people that I'm with, the classmates, my batchmates, I mean, they were great to be with. Some of them turned out to be lifelong friends. Those 2 years are actually in some ways quite instrumental, because they're intense years, right? You're with each other day in and day out. And, some of those bonds which I think come out of it are very, very real. And some of the bonds may be, just for that moment in time, and it's okay. But those friends of mine have been with me for a very long time.
So what was your general focus around that time? So in the B school, were you fixated that I want to do X, I want to do Y, I want to do Z? and that's all the learning that I'm going to get from here, or there was an overarching, learning experience that you were looking for? There are people in the audience who
Yeah.
always come up with this question saying that, should I do finance? Should I do, marketing? Is
Yeah.
that something going to be, career changing moment for me?
In the first year, it's actually a bit of an open year. You're not like forced to make a decision, right? So you give yourself that space, that opportunity, that openness to see what is it that is working for you. What is it that you're interested in, right? What is it that fascinates you? Because what you learn at B school or whatever it is that you're learning from the books is just the start of it, right? Am I willing to go deep into this? Am I willing to kind of learn more about this? Am I interested in seeing what else is out there? That's where you kind of figure out that, okay, this is something, I want to spend more time in, and I want to kind of go ahead and specialize. Nobody can give you this answer. You have to kind of figure it out for yourself, right? In some ways, some people say marketing is one of the worst kind of decisions you can make, because it doesn't have any prerequisite or any kind of a barrier that someone who doesn't have a MBA with a marketing degree can also not do, right? So, and that's true, that's a fact. But compared to a CA, like the CA has the degree which allows him or her to be protected, and if you don't have that degree, you can't actually walk into that. You can't walk into the same
Why would you
role.
say that they are protected?
You can't do the same thing, right? Because they are protected by a degree. Same thing like a doctor. I remember my dad told me this when I was taking up my MBA. So he's like, take this. It's a safer option. So I said, what do you mean by a safer option? He said, nobody can steal your job as a CA, because you need to have the qualification to sign off, right? If you're doing an audit, you need to be qualified to do an audit. Whereas a lot of jobs that you do as an MBA, you don't need that educational degree. If you look at, some, even jobs in finance, not everybody who's working in finance has a CA degree, or it's just that they know what to do, they know how to go about it, and they're hustling and they're running to go for it, right? My point is not that degrees are useless. My point is that you are the ones who make it happen, right? You decide whether you want to go ahead and be successful at this career or not, right? My career is in AI and data. I'm not an engineer. Right?
Absolutely.
And so you decide how you kind of want to succeed and what you want to succeed on. It's really all up to you.
Absolutely. And that takes me to the question, I wanted to understand this. You started off your career with a consulting firm.
Yes.
It was PwC,
I was at
right?
PwC, right over here actually, Nirlon House.
Right. And tell me a little bit about, that process, when you saw that PwC came on campus. Did you honestly, hand to heart, want to be part of the consulting world?
Yeah. I was very clear. I had actually done my internship at Philips, which actually is the head office is across the road. And but my internship was, interestingly enough, in the black and white television department. I was sent off to Pune, and then I was roaming around all the villages of Gujarat.
Were you selling people televisions there?
Kind of. I think so. I mean, just to start off the story, right? First of all, I mean, I had, it was my first experience outside of home. And luckily one of my classmates also got her internship in Pune. So we're so excited. And we were all kicked for 2 months of being in Pune. And then I walk into the Philips company in Pune, I think, the first Monday that I was supposed to join. I remember like my manager was this guy called Matthews. He looks up at me and he says, "Oh, you're a girl." I was like, "Yes, I am." So he's like, we were planning to send you to UP and, for all the villages over there to do black and white television. I was like, he's like, we really have to now rethink what we can do, because he realized it would be a pretty interesting issue. So on one hand, it was pretty cool that, we didn't have any gender scenarios going on, right? Now that I think about it, especially given the kind of conversations that happened today, literally my application just went from head office, to Pune, to just be like, okay, this person needs to go somewhere. This was, and just to kind of make sure the timing is, it was 2001. Oh, sorry, no, this is 1999. So it's not as if like black and white existed anywhere per se. Right? So what?
I had one in my house.
You did? Okay.
Yeah.
But it was on its way out. And the entire research or the survey was like, what do we do to be in this market as we know it's dying? Right? All of us are always in markets that are growing, and we're thinking about like, how do we kind of do things? But what do we do if this market is dying, and how do we kind of stay in this dying market, and what is it that we can do versus Oneida?
Right.
So that was what the research and the survey had been about. And I think if you, like, I realized that if you just kind of go and ask someone, how can this be better? What can be done? And you're sitting around patiently, they will start.
So Kuntal, it just came to me. Can this be called like 1999 model of data analytics?
Research? Yeah, I mean, research and collecting data is a part of analytics or AI anyways. So yeah. So curiosity and hunger, those are all things that actually do really well for an analyst.
Superb. So let's talk about, we were talking about PwC
Yeah.
and then, we went to black and white television a little bit. So I would like you to come back to PwC.
Yeah.
When PwC came on campus, were you excited to, get in there, work with them? Were you aware of what a consultant does?
Yeah, I was pretty clear about what strategy consulting is. I was fascinated by the idea of building models and building business plans and getting to understand what's going on at businesses. So I was quite clear that I wanted in.
What
And
exactly is strategy consulting? If you can just very briefly make us understand and make me understand as well.
Yeah, it actually is like one of those lovely large terms. Strategy in some ways is determining what a company can do at different levels. And I think somebody said it best, strategy is also deciding what not to do, which I think is absolutely fundamental,
Right.
right? You have multiple options and you're deciding what not to do. And it's one level below your vision and your dream. You're actually breaking it down into saying that this is our strategy and it informs your plans and finally it informs your goals. So it's an entire angle of right from top, if you have a vision, you have a dream, how do you break it down into a strategy for the company, a strategy for different departments, and then how does it further come down? So a consultant actually goes and develops strategies for different companies. The benefit that a consultant has is that in some ways they're an outsider and they are neutral. So while you're in a company, you're sucked into what's going on day in and day out.
Correct.
Right? But a consultant actually has sometimes the ability to see
An
something else.
overview because the consultant is looking from an outside.
And sometimes a consultant honestly is also brought in to just validate what the internal person has to say, and they're just kind of going ahead and putting their stamp and saying this is what it is.
Right. So did you like this profile when you saw that this is something that you're going to get into or would do?
Yeah.
Did you like that, and did you lap up to the opportunity, and
I
what
did,
happened
and
in the later years?
I kind of found, and I think as anybody who's, honestly, I think as anyone who's starting off in their career, in some ways, I think consulting is like one of the best options that you can have. Because it also thickens your skin to no extent whatsoever, right? You are working with managers who are in some ways ruthless. You're working with clients also who are equally demanding. You are doing things in a very analytical, detailed, thorough manner. And in some ways, I think it is the best training ground possible for a lot of people as they get started off. I mean, you just get to learn so much. You're exposed to different industries. You're exposed to models. So in my first year, I think I worked with Hinduja. I worked with Midday. I worked with a foreign company that was entering the country. I mean, it was actually pretty cool. Like, imagine at your first job out of school, and you're exposed to so much. It actually works out really well.
Basically gives you a
Tremendous.
chance to work on different sectors in
Different sectors. You're also speaking to senior board members from the companies. You get exposed to some stuff very quickly.
Right, and when you walked into PwC, were you expecting the sort of work culture or the people that you met there, or you thought that, this is completely different than what I had imagined or expected?
No, I think everything that I'd kind of thought of panned out. It definitely, had people who came from different backgrounds, different schools, but everybody was intent on working together. You often hear about cutthroat competitive cultures. I don't think that was there at PwC because the performance ranking system was done in a way that, it really didn't matter that you screwed somebody else over and got ahead. That didn't impact it at all.
Right.
So that was actually the nice thing that had been set up that way. I was lucky that both my directors that I was with were also extremely great and easy to kind of be with.
Right. Kuntal, tell me a little bit about, one particular story that stands out from the time that you have spent at PwC when you thought that, यार, why did I even consider consulting? मतलब मुझे तो ये बिल्कुल नहीं हो रहा है and I really don't know how to solve for it or answer this.
I think for me, one defining moment in that sense was, we'd given a presentation review to our senior consultant, and he was looking at it, and the only thing that he gave as feedback was that it lacks the arrogance of a consultant. And I was like, what do you mean? So he said that, you've written, you can do this, and he said, you should write, you should do this. This is how it's going to get accepted. And in some ways, there is a little bit of that truth in what he's saying. It's not just in consulting, but there are in other areas as well. You see that if you have authority or you speak in a slightly, assertive manner, you're taken more seriously than somebody who might be like, oh, what do you think if we do this? Versus, let's do this. Right? So there's a difference in terms of, you may think you're being collaborative and you're being nice by saying, oh, what do you think about this? And you're trying to have buy-in, whereas it's sometimes better just to say, let's just do this, finished.
Superb. And what was that defining moment when you thought that, enough is enough of consulting, now I want to switch gears?
So that moment for me actually happened when I was in Bearing Point. So PwC, I was still okay. I think at PwC, I kind of felt that, that's where my interest in numbers started coming in. I got interested in personalization, one-to-one, and these days these terms sound like super common and
right.
very easy for anybody to digest because that's all you read about. But in 2001, 2002, this was not that common. And I actually also I started believing as I was looking at more and more competitive ways for a company to grow, because that's what you're looking at when you're in consulting. I realized that the only way that a company could actually grow and be what they wanted to be was if they had customer loyalty and if they knew how to build experiences with customers. So that's where my interest in data came in. And I applied to I applied to 2 or 3 programs specifically at that time. And that's how I went to Northwestern.
Let's move to Northwest now.
And then, yeah.
Yeah, you have spent a considerable amount of time, as I mentioned also earlier, in US.
Yeah.
What was that moment like? When did you decide that, you want to leave India, you want to go to US, you want to further your career there, and why did this decision come in?
First of all, if you've just heard my story, I mean, I have the ability to move places and
Move
go
around.
places.
Yes.
So I think in that sense, it wasn't a big fundamental decision that I want to go to the US and I will never come back. I think it's always, in some ways, I always believe that, things are fluid enough. They were definitely not that fluid then, but now they are. And I just was intrigued and curious about what it would be to study in the US, what it would be like to be in the US, and I just wanted to experience that. I also had the challenge where I was already working, I was making a good salary, so I was like, now how do I justify paying for another degree, right? I mean, that's actually quite outrageous.
What was the degree that you were going for?
I went for a master's in science.
Right.
So it's actually in some ways quite outrageous.
But from MBA to Master in Science, how did that work?
It doesn't matter, right? Because I was very clear that I wanted to get into a program that focused on data, that focused on analytics, that actually helped to understand how analytics comes into product and marketing. And there are very few programs at that point that did this, and this was one of them. So I had actually, I think, applied for 4 schools. And while I was waiting for the decisions to come in also, I made up my mind that I'm only going to leave India, take the effort that is required to leave the country and uproot, etc., if I got into Northwestern or not at all. So it was at that point, it became a 0 to 1 scenario for me.
Right, and how was that experience in Northwestern? Was it a moment of, illumination
Yeah, absolutely.
came to you?
Absolutely. I think for me, that was, the time where I discovered that not only is data and understanding how to leverage data something that I enjoy, but I discovered I'm actually good at it, right? Because I hadn't figured that piece out. I hadn't figured out that not only can I develop models, but I can understand where and how to use data far more effectively than, not even half, but more than half of the people around, right? And I could do it for days at a stretch. So, they say that ikigai or whatever it is, right? That's where I kind of discovered it. And that's where I realized that this is what I want to do. The more you use Netflix, the more Netflix sees your behavior the better it gets. It almost seems like it's reading your mind, right? When you tune in on a Friday evening and it's got like binge-worthy, like, titles there for you to watch, because they know what you're doing and they're using recommendation engines.